of Women in Sales, and we are so excited that all of you are here today. We have a bunch of friends joining us, so I'm seeing everybody join in here. You're here today for an incredible event, a big topic that's come up countless times in Women in Sales, and that is the big question: should I stay or should I go? And this event would not have been possible without our friends at Reflect Path. And Fiona in particular. So we're super excited to be hosting this event together, to bring this content. And the coolest part about this event is that this topic came from the Women in Sales community, and now we're bringing it here to the Women in Sales community. So it's a beautiful full circle moment. But we're going to pass to our panelists for introductions, just so you can get to know each of them. So Fiona, let's start with you, and you're going to have a bonus question of telling people who Reflect Path is as well.
Hey everyone, I'm Fiona Simpson. I am two things, or many things I should say. By day, I work for a company called Boomi, and I serve as a senior enablement business partner there. And then the other thing that I do is I am the founder and principal advisor at Reflect Path, which is an advisory firm that helps both go-to-market leaders and individuals with tricky decisions and figuring out what to do in situations just like this one. And so the topic was sort of near and dear to my heart, and I could not say no when Alexine asked me to be a part of this. So really glad to be here. And just as a quick side note, Reflect Path just launched this summer, and this is actually my first event that I'm sponsoring. So I'm just super psyched. Women in Sales is my people, and I would not have picked any other group to partner with on this event. So just super glad you all are here and looking forward to the conversation.
Amazing. So happy that we were your first, and it makes total sense. You've been such an amazing part of the community. So of course we're going to do something together right out the gates. Shannon, what about you? If you can introduce yourself, maybe also tell people about your role at Women in Sales too.
Happy to. So hi, everyone. I'm Shannon Plum. I am a recovering chief revenue officer, worked in B2B SaaS for a very long time, do some fractional work on the side, but really my passions are my combination of being on the Women in Sales team, where I'm head of events. So I help Alexine behind the scenes planning all of the amazing, yummy events that we have, including our retreats, which we've got a couple coming up. Stay tuned. Mark the calendars from March 11th through 14th. And then I own my own company called Pearl Advisors, where I work with executive leaders coming out of toxic environments or living in toxic environments, helping them reclaim themselves through that process. I'm really excited to be here.
So happy to have you. Katie, last but not least, what about you?
Hey ladies, thank you for having me. Fiona, so excited to join you with Reflect Path. And of course, Women in Sales is so much fun. I'll start with that experience because I feel like the groupiest of the groupies when it comes to Women in Sales. But I will also plug the retreats and say that they're amazing. And I've been to all three that we've had so far. So just to, prove my groupiness there. But I'm joining you as a VP of revenue from a company called Point Care, an amazing health tech startup, and overseeing all of marketing, sales, and customer success, and actually going through a little bit of a transition as well. So a couple weeks from now, that title and company might change, but I'm not going to give it all away yet. And I love the world of training and enablement and sales, and have really, really found my connection and my footing through the Women in Sales community. So super happy to give back anything that y'all can find helpful.
Amazing. So happy to have you here. I think you and Shannon might be our only three-peats for the retreat. So you're holding some titles there. And for those of you who are in the audience today, and I see some friendly faces, I'm like looking at the chat. I saw the funniest comment. Someone said we could have been talking about Brussels sprouts, and they still would have attended. So what a blessing. That is a very kind, encouraging comment. But yeah, let us know where you're joining from in the chat. And in addition, we're really banking on Q&A for this one. We think this is going to be a really collaborative conversation, and we want to include your questions too. So please, if you have questions throughout today's conversation, list those in the Q&A tab that's to the right of the chat tab that you have, and just keep listing those out. And if there is something that you want to ask and it's something sensitive because you have a current employer, feel free to ask anonymously, and we will go ahead and share that anonymously when we get to the Q&A portion. So thanks for being here. So happy to have all of you, and we're going to dive right in. So the reason everyone that's on this panel here today is here is because we all have made the decision to stay or go at some point in our career. This is just an inevitability of working in sales and having a career. So we're going to talk about that. But I think a really cool place to start would be talking about some of the internal cues and signals that each of you noticed when you knew it was time to go rather than stay. So Fiona, let's start with you.
Yeah. And I think this is an interesting place to start because there's the obvious stuff. Like there's the big red flags, right? We could spend all day talking about those. Your HR team probably has a nice PowerPoint about them. But I think there's a few cues that I have picked up on along the way, and I'll just focus on one of them for the moment. And it's actually my own cue, which is when I get to a point in an organization where I might have been frustrated or dissatisfied or bored or any of those things. In the past, I know that I've definitely acted out. Like I've started being less participatory in meetings, or I've just been shorter or snippier with my colleagues, or any of those things that kind of, I don't know, I'm a heart on my sleeve kind of gal, for better or for worse. And in one particular circumstance, I realized that I was sort of becoming like a cancer on my team. Like my crappy attitude, because I didn't want to be there anymore, was starting to affect my colleagues. And I had to realize like, this is not fair to them. They don't deserve to be putting up with my BS just because I don't want to be here anymore. And that was kind of when I knew that it was time to see myself out. And I did. So those internal cues I feel like are really important, as well as the external things, but it's easier for us to listen to kind of what's going on inside sometimes. So always keeping an eye out for those.
Absolutely. And Shannon, you are one of the most intuitive, kind of like thinky people that I know. And so I'd love to hear from you too, because I feel like you have a really good sense of how you are feeling at any given time. So I would love to hear from you about what internal cues, signals, things of that nature you look out for.
Yeah, I think it's funny you said that because I was just about to say the exact opposite. So yes, I am incredibly intuitive and I feel things before I know how to express them. So I feel that like pit in my stomach. I feel that something's off that I can't explain. And I'll use just very vague words at vocabulary, but like internally it feels really intense. But I think the most interesting thing is that it's usually external that notifies me first. It's usually my husband, and he'll say something like, is everything okay? I'm sensing something's off before it's even come to my cognitive awareness that something isn't aligning right. And he'll go, you're acting weird, or you're I feel like you're disconnected. I feel like very distant from you. So I have learned, and we've been married a really long time, but I've learned to listen to him. I also have tuned into my personal board of directors and really paid attention to, hey, you seem quiet, because I get really distant when something, it doesn't feel right. I will kind of withdraw until I figure out what's not right, and then I'll re-engage. So it's actually, Alexine, an external cue that's the first warning sign that then tells me to tune into how I'm feeling and start paying more attention to that. Because I do intuit a lot of things all the time. I don't know if intuit's a word, if I just made that up.
I don't know either, but I like it. So
we're going with it.
Well, very good. And this is the whole reason we have these conversations, right? We're all going to have different perspectives. And I think that's important because we don't all think the same way. And so in order for us to be responsible and share these learnings, we should share from different viewpoints. So I think it's actually really cool. Yours are almost opposite. And then Katie, what about you?
Right off the bat, Shannon, you started describing kind of these internal feelings that you can't quite put words to. And for me, it's like the Sunday night icks. All of a sudden, Sunday afternoon, I'm starting to stress out. I stop eating. My husband definitely knows that and points out that cue too. It's definitely external. My kids are like, yo, you okay? Like, tomorrow's Monday. Are you getting stressed or something? So that's a huge cue, right? When you don't want to get out of bed and all of that. But I think there's another side to it, because I've had some good exits that were just kind of on the back of what Fiona was talking about, like feeling bored, feeling like I've kind of met my checklist. The motivation starts to suffer a little bit. I start to see a lot more holds on my calendar because, like, I don't know, maybe I was getting a pedicure that day because I'm not all that challenged anymore. And so those are some cues to look for too. It's not always the icks and it's not always the the yucky discomfort, but sometimes it's like a feeling of satisfaction that can be the cue of, I think I've done what I meant to do here. And then of course that elicits a whole, like, let me go back and check on my goals and check on my values. And you kind of go through all of that work. So those are some of the initial cues that hit me.
Three very cool perspectives, very different perspectives. So this is awesome. Great starting point for today's conversation. One other area, I feel like this comes up a lot. I've personally gone through this, and that's distinguishing between what's more of like a bad day or a bad week versus when it's time to move on. Because we have all had that, where we just had like a day or a week where every single thing that could go wrong, it's like Murphy's Law, everything does go wrong that could. And so I think it's important to help people distinguish between those two things, and what are more of like the true red flags, where it is definitely time to move on versus just like, okay, I might have had a bad afternoon. So Fiona, let's start with you, and then we'll go to you next, Katie, for this one.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, like I said before, there are some big red flags that, okay, again, we're going to kind of like leave alone the HR red flags, because that's just a no-brainer. But, you know, when you get to a place where you're disengaging from either the work or your colleagues or something like that, like your tempo of your day has shifted. Like, you're not as conversational with your colleagues if you work remotely. Maybe if you work in an office, you're spending more heads down time. For me, I feel like that's a big red flag of you've lost interest almost, right? And it's something that, like Shannon was saying earlier, can be really subconscious. You don't necessarily pick up on the fact that you're over and over and over again exhibiting that kind of same behavior, whether it's like disengaging from the work itself, from your colleagues, whatever it might be. On the flip side of, a bad day, a bad week, coming off a crappy quarter, whatever it might be, and you're just in a mood, right? Like, a mood is temporary in my mind, or those just, you hit every single speed bump on the way to work, every single red light, right? Like, those kind of crummy days are temporary. And I think being able to discern between the temporary state and a pattern, or a permanent state of being is really crucial.
Absolutely. And actually, Katie, I'm going to flip flop your question, because I think I want to hear from you on the green flag side, now that we've heard about the red flags.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, right. I'm trying to think back through the many experiences, right? I don't have a LinkedIn page that's like 10 years here and 10 years here and 10 years here. It's very, sporadic, and there's a lot in there because I've consulted and I've coached for a long time. But what I didn't talk about was owning my own business, right? That the exit became clear to me when, again, I had kind of met all my goals. That was very confusing for a lot of people around me who would have told me otherwise, like, stay in the game, you got this. And I was like, I just kind of met my goals and ready to do something else now. And since then, I've consulted a lot with a lot of companies, and was recently working with a company who had such a phenomenal onboarding plan. Literally one person in the company, there's about 400, to just give you a size gauge there. One person's whole job is management and leadership training. They're in the kind of HR and leadership world. And I'm like drooling, like, what? Your whole job is how to teach leaders to be better leaders. You talk about the RACI model and understanding responsibilities. You're talking about how to show up to meetings. You're talking about, let's talk about the biggest green flag I've seen lately is it's not only your obligation, it's your responsibility to give feedback to people who may not be showing up the best for themselves, their team, the business. And I'm like, wait, there's companies like this? They're out there. And so I feel like it just would be doing a disservice to this community to not mention that there are companies out there like this. Fiona, you just posted about an offsite that you had with Boomi, and how this is a dream team. You were really nervous about joining full time, but you stepped up, and you're like, the management is good. The dynamics are good. The accountability is good. And so I think it is important to just understand your values, right? For me, it's integrity. It's growth. Absolutely. That's where the boredom comes in. And if I can kind of map back the behaviors that I see and the expectations that I see to aligning with my values, we'll just flash the green lights all day long. So I think when you know your values, you can identify those green flags really well. And also for everyone who's kind of juggling, the should I stay or should I go, you're doing it for a reason. So go deep, understand what you want and write that story for yourself. That's something I learned from Shannon. Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Can I just add one tactical thing here, Alexi,
Please.
before we continue on? So this is all great. And I think everything that's been said so far is amazing. But if you don't have a means to capture that, and some of that is in real time. So start thinking about journaling, putting a pen to paper and actually taking the things out of your brain experiences, writing them down and seeing it all in one place. That's a really nice way to look at over time. How do these things stack up? Because I know I have bad days and they stack upon bad days. And then a couple weeks later, I have a bad day, but I forgot about the 2 bad days last week. And sometimes our brain doesn't tie these things together, or it takes us a lot longer to recognize trends if we are not using the data and actually journaling, writing things down, talking into your AI, analyzing the thoughts that you have. Like all those things are really great ways for you to start to see trends, just like we do in data and business. I think the same thing applies here as well. So having some output of that, all these things we've talked about, I think is really important.
And I think that draws on both sides of the coin, right? Like having that data can help you realize that the bad days are bad days and you're still aligned with your team and the green flags are still there. And it kind of gets you out of your own head and can help resolve the funk, right? And help you realize why you're there in the first place. Or it can, like you just described, Shannon, help identify the pattern of like, oh, I've had like 8 bad days this month. And it was every single time it was right after I met with my boss or whatever it might have been.
And it goes both ways, Fiona. So not to be the like mega silver lining cheerleader here, but
no, that's your job, Katie. That's why you're here.
when you have those great days, leave yourself a voice memo, right? Like I pick up my cell phone, I talk to myself while I'm driving. When there's not a podcast or a webinar on that's interesting, I'll just be on my own podcast with my voice memos and tell myself the wins and tell myself the struggles and the frustrations, because I can go back and listen to that and understand my tone, my feelings, and then kind of like journaling, right? It's like a voice journal. Be able to kind of sort out what was a feeling temporary and then what is becoming a trend. I have all these amazing voice notes. This place is great. Or like, gosh, I used to have 1 or 2 voice notes a week. Now I have 1 or 2 a day. And this place is not meeting my standards anymore. Great suggestion.
Yeah, these are amazing. And I'm loving the chat. There's a lot of really good conversations happening. So we are gonna do about 15 more minutes of our conversation. So if you have questions, start piling them into Q&A because we want to get some of your questions answered too during this conversation. But I think this is really critical because a lot of times we think, okay, I work for this company, I have a challenge, something's wrong, where I kind of see those as the biggest opportunities for us to figure out like, what is our leadership like? Because I think you learn a lot about how someone leads or how a company is going to treat you in a difficult time, much more so than when things are good. Because when things are good, you're hitting quota, goals are above and beyond, everybody loves you, and things are always going to be rosy for the most part. When things start to derail, when something goes wrong, when an account's unhappy, that is where you really learn about the environment that you're in and the leaders you're reporting to. So I actually think sometimes it's a good litmus test when something goes wrong so you can kind of see what environment you're in. And I tend to have the biggest and best learnings from the most challenging situations that come up. So I don't appreciate them in the moment, but whenever I reflect back a couple of weeks, reflect path back a couple of weeks, I always am really grateful for some of those challenges because they taught me the biggest lessons. So I think this is awesome. And I think this is a good segue for you, Shannon. I want to specifically ask you this question because I think it's really important to recognize, when discomfort is truly discomfort, but then there's opportunities too, where discomfort is actually growth. I think a lot about like the crab analogy where they go through this really uncomfortable, or I guess it's a lobster, period of time where they're trying to grow and push out of their shell. And so there's a ton of discomfort until that moment happens and until they move into the next level of their development. And I think that's very true of our careers and us as individuals. So I would love to hear from you, Shannon, about kind of the framework or how you think about recognizing discomfort as actual growth.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you nailed it. They feel the same. You can get that sickening feeling in your stomach. You can get the feeling like something's off, and it's checking in is this growth and I'm just uncomfortable, or is this a red flag that I really should pay attention to? And I think the starting point for all this, the foundation, is to list your goals and to list your non-negotiables. And I define non-negotiables as those things that if a line gets crossed, that is a sure sign that I need to move on. Quick segue is I once was a CRO in a company and the CEO asked me to go to the board and lie about pipeline. And I knew immediately that was my non-negotiable. I will not go to the board and tell them something that wasn't true. And I said that to the CEO and I immediately started looking for a new role. There were red flags before that. There were a lot of things, including having to lay off 75% of the company on week 2. So they weren't honest with me about even the financials before I started. But the second that they asked me to lie, where I knew that it was my reputation, that was a non-negotiable for me. So that was an easy one. However, there were a lot leading up to it, which I looked at more as, is this a discomfort? Am I being challenged here to learn something new and lead through a challenging time? So yes, I work with my clients a lot on this. There's a lot of people that come to me that are in transition. They've been laid off, or they are deciding if they should look for new opportunities. And so developed a proven method. So PROVEN. The P stands for pattern. So it's that pattern recognition. It's exactly what I mentioned, the audio notes, the journaling. You've got to take note of how you're feeling over time, and being able to look at it organically and historically, I think, is really important. One of the things I like to say is growth improves over time, or the more you do it, it's like a muscle. So the more that you exercise, the easier it's going to get, the more you're going to grow. Whereas harm, so the opposite, is going to compound. So it's going to get worse. So looking at those things and just taking note, which is weighing on that scale. The second is respect. So are your boundaries honored? Are you able to take time off? I had a conversation with somebody yesterday and they said they have unlimited time off. However, you can't take more than 20 days off. And I was like, that's interesting. That sounds like you should just have 20 days off. And people were being, they were overstepping that, not knowing that the arbitrary limit was 20 days. And so that's a misalignment right there. And it might be one of your boundaries of, I need time off to go on vacation with my family. The next is orientation. So the O is orientation. And this is aligned with your values or not. This is that I will not lie. I have integrity. I'm going to do whatever I say, whatever those values are that you just stand by. And this is just not in work. This isn't really all of your life, but being really clear about what those are, orienting to a company that aligns with those is really important. Vitality. So if you come home every day and you're like, oh my gosh, don't talk to me, I just want to go in my bed and scroll through TikTok and I don't ever want to see you again, that's a sure sign. It's not energizing you, it's depleting you. And I think you really should pay attention to that energy level. Yes, you're going to have tough days. And I know when you go to a conference or something, you're always on. That drains a lot of people, but it shouldn't be every day. So again, keeping note of that. E is empowerment. So are you empowered to make things better? Are you feeling like you've chosen to be here? Or are you just trapped in this space and you don't know how you got here? If your life or your job looks like something that's Frankenstein and you go, how did I get to this point? That might be a sure sign that something's off and not aligned with your goals, your values, if it's just piecemealed together. And then the last one is nourishment. Is this building you up or is this breaking you down? So a little bit like the muscle reps that we talked about before in gaining that repetition. This is another one you should pay attention to. Is it getting you closer to your goals? Is it helping you become a better person? Are you feeling like you're able to show up as your whole self in the role? Or are you just feeling like you're constantly having to compromise? You're constantly giving things and not getting things in return. So that's what I use with my clients. And it really does help to lay that out and look at each thing individually.
Incredible advice here. And Fiona was kind enough to drop Shannon's framework into the chat. So check out that LinkedIn post when you have a second, because I think that'll help you go deeper into this. But thank you, Shannon. I love that framework. Yeah. That is fantastic. So we're going to pivot a little bit on the other side, because a lot of us have made decisions to go, but what about if we make the decision to stay? Because especially if we've been in a funk, especially if there's been like a lot of negative stuff happening, it's sometimes really difficult to kind of get back into it and kind of restart with a renewed energy and intention and boundaries and do all of those things. So Fiona, what advice do you have if people are deciding to stay and if they have decided it's worth it to continue at the company they're at?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one area where we often will decide to stay is because of the people we work with, the team, like feeling like we can have support through what maybe turned out to just be like a rocky patch, a bad quarter, whatever it might have been. And I think there's an opportunity to lean on the people that you work with. So there's always sort of this maybe taboo, you could say, about like, okay, I just went through this crappy thing. Like, should I even say anything about it? And in my mind, the best way to get past a season like that, where you've been unhappy, you've been unsettled, you've had a bad quarter, whatever it might have been, is to be honest about it. And not saying like, go tell your whole team, but like if there are trusted people, whether it's somebody that you work with, a peer or a director or somebody that you can go to and say, hey, this is what I just kind of am coming out of. Can you support me through this? Because I want to stay here. I want to be here. I want to re-engage. I think that's the easiest place to start. And that can be really hard and really scary to like go to your boss and be like, hey, I was thinking about quitting, but I talked myself out of it. Please help me stay. That can be a really uncomfortable conversation. But I think if you're really authentic about it and really come from a place of integrity and seeking support, I think the right leaders and hopefully the ones that you stayed for are going to be really responsive to that and work together to come up with a plan to kind of pull you out of the funk and keep you in the game, so to say. I think that's a great place to start, is just being honest about it and looking for support.
And it's a red flag if they are not supportive, right?
Yeah, and then they're like, kick
that might
rocks,
change
and
your
it's time to
mind.
go. You're like, never mind.
That's the one I feel so passionate about too. If you can't look around the org when you have an issue and find someone safe to help you, like, I mean, it might not be on the HR presentation, right, of red flags, but that is a huge one. That is a huge one.
Absolutely. I think about one of the biggest, most challenging conversations I had was at a company I stayed with for a while. And I actually really loved the company and I switched to a different role. And I stayed in that role. I came out of the gates really hot, was doing really well. My manager and I were not a fit. Like we were not compatible. And prior to me taking that role, he and I were actually really close. Once I came onto his team, we were not doing so hot. And we had, I will never forget, we had a one-on-one once. And we just both closed our computers and we're like, what's happening? Like, what is going on here? Like, we have a weird energy. Things are not good. And I just was honest. I was like, I don't think I should be on your team. I don't want to leave the company. I love this company. I'm doing really well. Like, I will do well wherever I get put. But I have another idea of where I could be a better value and serve the company in a different way. And I'm wondering if you will basically endorsed me internally to the leadership team. And it was great. Like I actually ended up writing my own promotion at that company. I got a brand new role. I ended up on a different team. He and I were cool. Like he actually helped advocate for me, but it was an incredibly challenging conversation. So, you know, sometimes it's worth it to have those conversations, especially if you have some level of rapport. If you're in a really bad place already with your manager, it's a lot harder to have those. But if you're just like, hey, we were good, things are okay, and then it seems like we derailed somewhere, if you can have those open, honest conversations, you might surprise yourself what actually happens, because people inevitably typically want to help people, especially if they know that they care about the company and they want to be there. So, you know, don't discourage yourself if it feels like it's time to have one of those conversations. Sometimes it's worth it. And
there's so much room too, Alexine, there's so much room to grow when you want to run, right? And that's sort of my first reaction. Like, I think all three of you have been a part of this for me personally, where I'm like, this insane thing happened. What do I do? And it's so easy to just say, get out of there, right? There's so much more for you. There's growth elsewhere. You know, again, look at your goals, look at your values. Is this where you want to be? All of those things. But there's also so much that you can learn. And same tone, like staying in the role long past when I should have taught me so much more. It gave me so much more space to learn. And I wanted to mention, I don't know, I think sometimes people teach you the rules to play by, right? But at the same time, and especially as women, there's a Martha Beck quote that's phenomenal, which is like, stop reaching out for consensus and come to your senses. And it's the root of that is like, what I typically would do is go find consensus among all my people, among all my women, and like everyone who really knows me. And sometimes I need to just come to my senses, right? Like, what do I want? What is going to work? And although in a previous situation, everything said run, for me, actually like digging deep and staying was where I found all of the growth. It's where I found stability. It's where I found sort of purpose in finding that next step and carving out a strategy for how I move on instead of just running and sort of being, lost in the woods in the meantime.
Absolutely, absolutely. The Q&A is a flowing now. We are getting some questions. It's very exciting. So I'm like chomping at the bit because I want to get to those. But Fiona, before we go there, can you talk a little bit about how and where you use reflection tools to separate fear from intuition?
Yeah, and I think Katie kind of teed that up beautifully. And actually, part of the reason why my company is called Reflect Path is because I really strongly believe that our own internal intuition and all those other pieces really tell us what we need to know. Like our subconscious and our intuition sometimes has made the decision for us before, like Shannon was saying earlier, it even like kind of hits the front of our brain. And so I think spending that time to reflect internally, quietly, without asking everyone all around us for their thoughts is a really good place to start. And what I often will work with my clients on is kind of like writing out both sides of the story. Like one part of you might say stay, one part of you might say go. What does that actually look like if you if you're afraid of leaving, let's say, because of the financial instability? Let's just say you have that fear kind of weighing on you. Like, write out what that story looks like. If I left, here's where I would be. Here's what, I have 3 months of runway before I need to find another job, whatever those things might be. And then write out the other side of the story. If I stay, here's all the things that I'm going to go through. And so that helps really kind of see which way you're tipping by whether you're writing it or voice noting it or whatever it might be. Because the language that you use to describe those situations will tell you a lot. Another piece that tells you a lot is, this is where I get a little woo-woo. So come on the woo-woo journey with me. But what I call body scanning, which is paying attention to how your body feels when you say or think different things. I use this a lot with my clients who are seeking a new role and they're deciding, like, should I go in this direction? Should I go hard for product marketing manager or should I stay as a product marketing specialist? And I ask them to say, hi, my name is Fiona. I'm a project marketing manager, out loud, and see how their body responds to saying one thing versus the other. There's a lot of research behind that the way that our nervous system responds to thoughts and ideas is actually really telling. So that's the other piece. And then I think once we've gone through that self-reflection component, I think then it's appropriate and kind of time to go to someone that you trust and describe it to them and do the same thing. Watch for what language you use when you describe the situation. If you use a lot of really negative language, like I hate my boss and I'm really upset and I'm really frustrated, and negative versus positive on the other side of the story, it tells you a lot.
Just to add one thing to that, Fiona, I have clients actually verbally go through the process of quitting. Because has anyone ever quit a job and feels this like intense relief, like it's the best decision you've ever made? Totally. When you say it out loud and actually say, I'm handing in my notice, again, it's that body scanning you just described. You'll either feel this sense of dread or like wanting to pull the words back in your mouth, or you'll want to like jump up and celebrate. And you should notice how your body feels doing a test run before you actually walk into your boss's office and quit.
That is a good idea. I like these strategies. These are great. All right. I feel like, Fiona, with your permission, I think we dive into the Q&A.
Let's go. There are some good questions in here.
Okay, cool. All right. So we're going to get started, and you can keep upvoting questions if you like to, but I'm just going to start with whatever has the most votes and we'll go down from there. So this is for any of you to answer. So whoever wants to take these, but starting out first, Kiana asks, before deciding to leave, what is the most critical conversation an employee must have with their manager or leadership, and how should they prepare for it? Excellent question.
I can grab that one just to get us started. There's two pieces. So I think when you've come to a decision on your own, it's really important to own that. And I think there's an opportunity to really show your integrity and exit gracefully. And so I think the conversation should be, first and foremost, it should be with your direct manager, because it affects them the most. I would definitely not recommend like going above their head or going to another person in leadership. And I again go back to just being authentic and leading with integrity and saying, this is the decision that I've come to. These are the reasons why. And maybe keep that at a level that feels positive, right? Like don't go in there to just like complain about your 5 coworkers that make you miserable or whatever it might be. Simplify that and say, I've made the decision that I need to move on from this company. Let's build a plan together, because that gives them an opportunity to say, hey, like there's this really big thing coming down the pike and I need your help, and like let's get through that, or whatever the circumstances may be. It gives them an opportunity to respond rather than just, here's my resignation, I quit, good luck. There's certainly circumstances where that is appropriate, but I think if you're in a space where you can give them 2 weeks or give them a month or something along those lines, having a really healthy conversation around it before anything turns ugly is super valuable.
Mhm.
One other thing to add to that, Fiona, is know how you're going to react if they come back and counteroffer you. So a lot of times people will give notice and they'll say, oh, no, you can't leave. I'll give you that promotion or I'll do this. So working through yourself, I think this is one of your values or non-negotiables and kind of what process you've personally gone through to get to this decision to leave. My personal belief is that you can never go back. So once I've made a decision that I have to leave somewhere, I've made that very thoughtfully. I have checked all my boxes. I've done all the work I can to try to save the opportunity. And I really know that this is the right decision. So no matter what they throw at me, my response is going to be, really appreciate that offer. Thank you so much. However, my decision still holds. There are other people that feel differently and use it as a negotiation tactic or kind of hope that that will happen. So just be prepared for that one way or the other and how you're going to respond if that does happen.
Absolutely. And I dropped the age-old stat of over 80% of employees who accept a counteroffer will leave the company within 6 to 12 months.
Yep.
And we know that also because the reasons that you were going to leave generally don't change. There's also always a small majority of the time that everything changes, the culture completely turns, maybe leadership turns over, something to that effect. But for the most part, whatever led you to that decision in the first place is still going to be in place. So you getting, an extra $500 per paycheck, unfortunately, doesn't typically resolve what's at the core of the issues of you wanting to leave in the first place. So very important data point that I always think about and recommend to keep in mind in these conversations too.
My super tactical takeaway on this one is go through your employee handbook, go through your documents, make sure that you have your FSA money spent, your HSA money spent, that you know how to get your retirement out, you have your contacts. If you have someone in HR that you can talk to about like the best way to exit financially, I mean, you might find out that there's a way for you to get a couple months severance because and get your stock vested because they want to save face and not have somebody leave at that time. Like you never know what that is. But I think for me, it's immediately like have your financial conversations in order. If you just need 2 more weeks to vest that stock, like just hang in there. You got this, girl.
That is true. That is true. And I'm also complete aside here, but whenever you have an educational budget, whatever it is, I'm a big proponent of spend it when you get it. Like spend it as soon as you get it, because one company I worked for gave us $2,000 a year. I spent it by January 15th. I was like, I'm booking my conference tickets for the year. I bought some books. I had like a course or something I wanted to do. They canceled that benefit as of January 31st of that year. And I was one of like 2 people that used it for the entire year. And I was like, so if you have those benefits, 100% agree, use them, maybe use them even sooner. Maybe use them towards a women in sales retreat. Maybe that's a good use for them. So a quick aside there. But okay, our most upvoted question is coming up. So we're going to rapid fire this one because we actually have a bunch of questions. So maybe if one of you wants to take this one, and then we have like 5 or 6 other questions. So we'll just go one at a time for these. So how can I tell if my manager is against me or actually wants me to succeed? Sometimes it's hard to tell. Who wants to take it?
I think that the best way is to be forthcoming and ask. I would label what I'm seeing and identify, hey, I'm seeing these things that are a little concerning because I feel like they're working against my success in this role. Can we just be really honest? Are we on the same page? Here's my goal. Does that align with your goal? I always go for really honest, straightforward conversations because I've learned that leading with authenticity absolutely helps me understand. And most of the time, I can tell by their body reaction, even if they don't say the words, I don't want you to succeed. When I ask the question, it'll make them feel uncomfortable because I called them out, and I will be able to read their facial expressions, etc., to understand everything I need to know to make the best decisions for myself.
Very, very well said. And you do a great job of this too, because even like Shannon is great for women in sales because you do sometimes push back on stuff and it's very healthy and we can have those honest conversations and you do a good job of reading between the lines. You're like, okay, you said this, but what else is underneath this answer? So I really appreciate that about you. I think that's a wonderful quality. And so, okay, next question. This is a really good one, actually. This is from Tina. Is it beneficial to set a deadline in a sense if you are waiting for things to improve, i.e., if compensation reporting doesn't improve by X date, I'll begin looking?
I think easy yes on that one. For me, I've always set my date. This is my hard stop by this date. Tell some friends, be held accountable to that. And it's all the same reasons Shannon was saying before. Like you've gone back and you've made that decision for a reason. And so understand what you can handle, what you can grow through, and how much time you need to do those things, and then set that date, commit to it, commit to yourself. I mean, we have like SMART goals that are time bound, and nobody wants to run around with just a SMART goal, right? And not have the T to it. But the other part of that, and this is something I really value in Fiona, is like you know what's on the inside. You have that genius inside. Have guides and advisors around you who are going to bring that genius out of you. When you know. So why wouldn't you set a date for yourself to get out of that situation, to move into a new opportunity, right?
Yeah. And don't put that date unless, barring what you said earlier, Katie, about like options or something to that effect where you need to stay through a certain date or like a bonus period, whatever. Barring those situations, do not set a date that's like 6, 8, 12 months away because you will not enjoy that time in between. Because once you make that decision to leave, it is my belief that you should try to expedite to get to that point. And so if you are going to pick a date, try to keep it within the near future because you lose motivation and it shows up a lot in your work. And I would rather myself end on a high note and go out, with my integrity and my head held high. And I think that's a lot easier to do when you have a shorter term expiration.
And never the last day of the month, right? Like always with salespeople, you're watching for that quota. Can I make a little bit more in bonus if I get here? How is my bonus paid? But for benefits too, for non-salespeople, for benefits, don't quit on the 31st or the 30th because your benefits will end. Make it the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, so that you have that 30-day coverage where your benefits are paid by the company still.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is just a me thing. I'm very big on integrity. If there's like something really big happening at the company, I see this all the time where people who are really involved with like conferences, for example, will quit like a week before the conference. That is not me. I don't want to do that. I'm not that kind of person. So I would say just try to be mindful, even if you're like chomping at the bit to go, even if it's go time, like try to just be cognizant because it's not going to be the company that takes the hit for that. It's going to be whoever your colleagues were and whoever has to pick up the slack. So keep that in mind. That's just me. I try to think about that when I'm making decisions, but I swear every year around conference time, there's like a mass exodus of the people involved in conference planning. And I'm like, man, that's tough for their teammates. Okay, we're pivoting. Nikki has a really good question in here. And Nikki had a really cool comment in the chat too. So go back and look at that. Because I think that was really powerful. But Nikki asks how to overcome self-judgment for leaving/changing your mind when the industry constantly tells us that job hopping is bad. This is
Can I take this one? I'm like chomping at the bit.
No, I was going to take it.
You can both take it.
You go, Fiona. I'll arm wrestle you. You won. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I'm wearing a halter top in honor of Nikki. Like I put this on and I was like, this is the most Nikki Lang top that I own. And so I've just been on Nikki vibes all day. So here is what I want to ask about that question. Job hopping is bad for whom? asking the question about who's telling this narrative gives you a lot of information. Job hopping is bad for companies because they have to deal with replacing you.
Mhm.
Job hopping has been the best part of my career. I literally am making 10 times more money than I was 10 years ago because I've moved jobs.
Yep.
And so to answer the self-judgment part of the question though, Nikki, I think it all starts with the story, right? Who's telling you to judge yourself, and what are you telling yourself, right? What is the source of that judgment? If it's I'm letting people down, or I'm betraying the company, or I am going to look bad on my next resume, or my next interview cycle, start to unpack some of those things, right?
Mhm.
And I think especially when I work with clients who are having a struggle around this, what I try to help them do is shift that narrative, right? Shift the judgment away from, well, I'm disappointing people and letting down my team and so on and so forth, to what about me? Am I letting myself down by staying somewhere where I'm not growing? Am I letting myself down by not making as much money as I could if I moved on to somewhere else? Shifting those narratives on both sides of that coin, I think, is really the key there. Over to you, Shannon.
I was just going to say, I think you hit on so much I was going to say, but Nikki, I've had 38 jobs in my career. I hit that for the longest time. Now I embrace it because those 38 jobs gave me everything that I bring to the table today, which is a wealth of information across so many different industries and verticals, across so many different roles that I never would have experienced otherwise. And I feel like I have a really good red flag sense. And I never put myself in a situation that I shouldn't have been in for longer than I was because I was constantly on the lookout. And now it's my superpower, like that pattern recognition, the seeing things across different industries, the ability to learn things quickly. I never would have gotten if I had stayed at the same company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also the definition of job hopping, in my opinion, has changed since the pandemic, I think more than anything, because job hopping used to be less than 3 years, actually. So pre-pandemic, whenever people would talk about job hopping, it was in reference to 3 years, which now is actually like a long tenure at a company. I think now what's considered job hopping, again, this is just in my peripheral experience working with numerous talent acquisition teams, anything less than a year is what they will like quantify as job hopping. And so what I will say to that is I've had stints that are a year. Other people have had stints that are a year. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think where there's maybe a signal or a trigger for you to do some introspection would be if you have multiple like under 6 month stints, like say there's like 3 back to back. I actually do think there's like a learning moment there of like, okay, I needed to maybe change my process for how I'm vetting companies or the leaders I'm going to be reporting to. So I always think there's a learning opportunity somewhere in there, but I'm in full agreement that I think this idea of job hopping, especially if we're going to make more money at every single change, and especially as women where we tend to be undercompensated, it makes sense to move roles. And sometimes it's the only way that we make more money. And so that's just kind of like two sides of the coin there, because I think it's important. I know some people who there was someone that reached out to me and they were on like 6 jobs in 1 year. I'm like, I think there is a learning moment there. I think there is actually something to explore, and there might be something worth evaluating and deciding like which types of companies we're looking for, what types of leaders. So that's just my 2 cents on both sides of the coin. But let's go forward. Okay. Oh, I like this one from Tina. How can you look past the quote unquote, the grass isn't always greener mindset?
I'm going to jump in with this one because I think it answers a couple of the questions in the chat. And really, for me, it comes down to knowing your values. So we've talked about that in a number of ways. Know your what did you call it, Shannon? Your non-negotiables.
Non-negotiables.
Right?
Yep.
Know what gives you life. Know what sucks it out of you. Know if the people above you are giving you that path to growth and you're learning from them. Know where you're headed, right? So there is like a lot of internal reflection and a lot of work that has to come when you're trying to weigh what the world might say versus what you say, right? What the consensus is, job hopping is bad versus.
Oh no, we lost Katie.
She was crushing it though.
She was crushing it though.
No, I wish I could finish her sentence.
Yeah. Well, she'll come back.
Sorry.
She is.
I'm like, was that just me that lost that? The consensus, right? Job hopping is bad versus your sense is I'm going to do this to build my career. That's what's important to me right now, whatever it is, right? Besides the fact, Tina, that the grass is actually, by the definition of physics, greener on the other side. You have to sort of forget that, right? But find what makes you happy. Find what's grounding for you. The one in the hand versus the two in the bush. Like, if you can put enough things on the pros side of that pros and cons list, then one in the hand might be worth it. But if it's dragging you down, it's making you crazy, it's making your husband comment, it's making your 8-year-old feel funny about the time she gets to spend with mom after work, maybe two in the bush is better at that point. And so I want to just validate that there's so many layers to this, that we can sit up here all day and say, like, know your values, do this, reflect in, but that's work that every single person has to do themselves and has to ultimately make that decision for themselves. And so I think, Nikki, you put it in the comments too, like, this is why communities like this exist, right? We're here to affirm each other, validate, cheer each other on. But at the end of the day, it's your decision, right? We're going to support you in your decision, and you should support you. Like, you're the most important you that you have. So I don't know. It's like a long way around a really short answer of, you have to find that within yourself, and it's there, right? Spend the time. Fiona's sort of an expert in this these days.
Yeah, and I commented this in the question, and I'll just tag on here with this, that, I've always told, like, younger people that I work with that just, like, one thing goes sideways and they want to quit, and they're like, the grass is greener on the other side. The grass is not always greener. The shit is just in a different place. And what I mean by that is, you're always going to have to deal with stuff. You will have bad bosses. You will have companies that don't care about you. You will have a crappy salary. These things are just part of living under capitalism or whatever. And so you have to decide, to Katie's point, what are you willing to put up with? What are you willing to deal with? Because there's this sort of, it's tricky. There's this sort of like, oh, shiny new job. Like, that's very exciting. But no matter how brilliant the process is and how wonderful they are bringing you on, there's just got to be crap that you have to deal with. And so I think it's really a balance of looking at that and deciding what's best for you. I'll say this to Katie's point also, like, one in hand, two in the bush. I think of that from a very economic standpoint. There should be no shame in going after a new job for more money. Like, we deserve that for ourselves. There is lots of money out there to be had, and all of us have the ability to go get it. I think of money as energy, and the harder you work, sorry. My dog's barking because there's somebody knocking on the door. Perfect timing. Money is just energy, right? And the best thing that we can do is collect as much energy as we can to redistribute it to the people and the things that we care about. So that's my 2 cents on that one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we went over. We were planning for 45 minutes. We're now like 10 minutes over. There's still a bunch of questions. We have a Women in Sales Slack community, so you can jump in there. We can continue the conversations in the knowledge sharing channel, for example. We would love to keep talking about some of these things. Someone dropped a really good point in, Elisa, about discussing supporting yourself, not having a partner, and then thinking about the financials. I would love to take that question into the compensation and negotiations channel in Slack. So please repost that question so we don't lose it. Some really good conversations still to be had. Thank you to our lovely panelists, Katie, Shannon, Fiona, for being here. Thank you to Fiona and Reflect Path for sponsoring this event. We are honored to be the very first sponsorship for Reflect Path. And I dropped the link in a couple times so that you all can reach out, go to the Reflect Path website, get in touch with Fiona so that you can get some advice and guidance and some resources. So thank you all for being here. We'll see you at the next Women in Sales event. Take care.
Thank you.